So here we go. This unit here, we're talking about the Byzantine and Islamic cultures. We're also going to be pulling in some of Asia as well, because we did skip over some of that in one of the chapters here. We're going to make sure that we give you a little bit of overview on what's going on in Asia at this time as well. So Byzantine and Islamic culture are the two major focuses here in this unit. We're going to start with the Byzantine civilization today. This would be Roman numeral 1 if you are keeping score at home. You're going to see that term a lot. You're going to see Byzantine. So what is Byzantine? What are we talking about when you see that term? Your mind should immediately be thinking, what part of the world? Where is the Byzantine Empire? Okay, Turkey, Greece, Eastern Rome, right? Mm-hmm. So be thinking, this is the eastern half of the Roman Empire that still exists after Rome falls apart. So Byzantine civilization. We also label this New Rome. So many times you will see multiple definitions or multiple terms for the same city. New Rome is one. Constantinople, Byzantium is sometimes used. But it is the same location right off of the Black Sea, and it was originally brought over here and set up by Constantine. We talked about him in the last unit a little bit, when he moved the capital city from Rome here to Byzantium. This city was an old Greek city that had been under Alexander the Great's empire, and most people, as you saw in the video that we watched, would look at the people in this city as more Greek than Roman. What were some characteristics that video described people like that would describe them as more Greek? Colin? Yeah, very clean. Yeah, that's one description. What else? Manuel? Okay, they didn't like a fight. They'd rather find an agreeable difference, or they'd rather turn and walk away than actually meet somebody in combat. They didn't want to pick a fight with somebody. Compared to the people in Western Rome, they're all about getting down and dirty and fighting it out and finding out who's the strongest and best and all those type of things. So here we have the Eastern Roman Empire developed by Constantine, known as Constantine's city or Constantinople. This city was established in 330 AD. I'm not going to ask you that on a test, but it gives you some perspective here when you understand that Rome is going to fall not very long after this. It's a very important commercial center. So what do I mean by a commercial center? What's going on there? Business, yeah, trade. Business and trade is happening here in Constantine's city. It was a very important political and religious center as well. So really anything and everything that was important to the empire was happening here in Constantine's city at this point of history. And it was one of the 5 most important patriarchal cities in the new universal church. Remember, who are the patriarchs? Talked about patriarchs last unit. Who are the patriarchs? Think church, think... Okay. They're elevated priests. They are overseers of many churches in the region. And so Constantinople is one of the 5 significant patriarch cities that would have been controlling many other churches in the region. And this city withstood a lot of the barbarian threats. So somebody commented earlier on how the western side had more attacks than the eastern side. That's not necessarily true, because we know that the eastern side was able to withstand them better than what the western side was able to. And yet, even despite the fact they were very Greek, they still maintained a lot of the culture of Rome and traditions of Rome. Yep.
So were like the Visigoths and some of those people would aid the Germanic tribes?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They would more Germanic. Yeah. This city becomes known as the Queen of the Mediterranean. because of all of the wealth that came through here and because it now became the major hub of the Mediterranean, this became the gold star standard for all the other cities around the Mediterranean. And so, by the way, for those of you that are taking notes on what's up on the screen is important, yes, but taking notes on what we're talking about as well, adding to it, would also be a wise use of your skill set here. So if, as I'm talking, if there's stuff that you say, yeah, I already know that, I'm pretty good on that, feel free not to write it down. But if you are not very familiar with it or it's something brand new, then it might be a wise idea for you to keep that in mind and to write down something. So we're going to talk about Justinian here for a few moments. Seems like that video, we got a pretty good idea for who Justinian was. Somebody give me some things you know about him or Theodora based off of what we watched in that video a moment ago. Johnny?
Well, he wanted to bring back the power of Rome.
Yes, he wanted to bring back the power of Rome, and he wanted to reunite the eastern and western side of Rome together. Did he accomplish that? No. He tried, but didn't. What else do we know about Justinian or Theodora?
Wasn't very methodical in dealing with what he did was work short term, but
Okay, didn't really think long term. Yeah, good point. What else, Emmanuel?
His wife was much the one that wanted him to stay in the empire.
Yes. So that's why I have her up at the top of my list up here with Justinian, because she is really the backbone behind his legacy. If it were not for her, what would Justinian have done when times got tough? He would have run away, right? And he very nearly did, except for the fact that Theodora said, "What are you doing, you lazy coward? Get back over there and let's do something about this." So Theodora is the reason why Justinian is talked about in history. And a lot of that goes back to the Nika Revolt. And we saw that illustrated in the video, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here talking about this. But did you catch what the word Nika means? Yeah, it means conquer. Okay, so off to the side here, put Nika means conquer, because that was the revolt was trying to conquer Justinian's reign. So when you put on a pair of Nikes, no, I'm sorry. We're not going to go into that conversation today. But the Nika Revolt, it was originally a riot that took place in the Hippodrome. I told you we were going to talk about that, right? So there's a Hippodrome where they would have these chariot races. Write down Hippodrome if you're going to forget that later on. Hippo, like at the zoo. Drome, D-R-O-M-E. Hippodrome, not drone like flying in the sky. It's not like a big old hippo just flying through, taking pictures of people. No, this is drome, D-R-O-M-E. So the Hippodrome was this place where they had these chariot races, and there was a riot that started off as a argument among rival teams. That riot turns into a political argument, which then turns the direction toward Justinian, and Justinian was watching all that was going on, and they started to riot against Justinian. And it turns into this massive political revolt that very nearly cost Justinian his rule. And we saw throughout the video here, he wanted to run out of the city, he wanted to flee away and just escape, and Theodora says, "No, get back here, let's take care of him." It ends up with 30,000 people dying in that Hippodrome because of Justinian and his loyal soldiers that help take care of that. And so one of you mentioned this, that his goal was to restore the greatness of the Roman Empire. And one of the ways that he tried to accomplish this was by writing a law code. And so history has gone through and has renamed it the Justinian Code because we give him credit for it. But he is trying to reorganize all of the old Roman laws that seemed to work during the greatness of the Pax Romana. And so he's taking what he could remember or what was documented, and he's trying to fit it into his modern day. And so a number of things about the code that would be helpful for you to keep in mind. First of all, the code itself became the basis for many modern European nations today. So when you start looking through the constitutions or important documents of European countries, there are a lot of them that can be traced back to the foundation of the Justinian Code, where they got their start. And it references back to Justinian's law code here. There are a total of 5,000 Roman laws that were put into this code or adopted into this code. We will be reading and memorizing half of them. No, we won't. Yeah, there are 5,000 Roman laws. So what my point that I'm trying to help you understand with that is that there were a lot of laws that Justinian looked over that he incorporated into this. I'm not going to ask you that on a test how many laws were there. No, but know that a lot of Roman influence poured into this. He also put together the digest. This is 50 volumes. Okay, so 50 books of Roman legal court cases and court decisions. And in this digest, there's so much information that tells how the Roman courts dealt with specific cases that it became the foundation for the process of what we know today as judicial review, where we go back to looking at how a previous court ruled on something, and we're going to follow a similar pattern. And this was something that not many cultures had really incorporated, but he found the value in learning from what Rome had done in the past and applying it to the future. He also put together the institutes. This is a textbook. And this textbook explains how to use and interpret Roman laws. So if I'm summarizing this up here, I'm saying the code is actually the laws. The digest is court cases from Rome that gives me an example of how those laws were applied. And the institutes is a textbook. It's the cliff notes of how to make this work. Yeah, it's a textbook that explains how to use the laws. That way they are being applied appropriately. And then we have here the novellae. These were all new laws that were passed after the year 534. Okay, so I'm not going to quiz you on the year here. But these were new laws. Okay, you almost see the word new in here, novellae, new. The new laws. These would be ones that were unique, that were not part of Roman law. That would be applied specifically to Justinian's empire that he had created or his empire was going to create. Okay, any questions on these? We good? Sweet. Every culture has a golden age, a height of their empire, one that we can look at and we can pinpoint, we can say this was the best time to live in this culture. And this is exactly where, if you could pick any point in time, this is where you'd go. Well, the golden age of the Byzantine culture was during the time where Justinian is trying to build up the empire as large as it possibly can. He's got building projects all over Constantinople. Justinian and Theodore are ruling together, and it is during his reign that the Byzantine culture is at its peak. Extensive building programs are happening. He is trying to restore the grandeur of Rome. He is trying to make Rome back into what it once was. He may have had a hat that said, "Make Rome great again." Sorry, that's a bad joke. But he wanted to put Rome back into a place of prominence. So that meant restoring many of the places that had been destroyed by the barbarians, the Vandals, and the Visigoths. He put into place many public works projects as well. What comes to mind when we think public works? What are you talking about there? Like what? Okay. Habitat for Humanity might be something where it's going to restore and build up communities. Yeah. What else are public works? What? Yeah, maybe housing. More for everybody here. Think of like plumbing systems or drainage systems. Think about roads, bridges, transportation, all those things. Maybe garbage removal. Yeah, that might have been something for public works there. So he tried to institute that, which was something that Rome had at its peak. It had declined. He was trying to reinstitute that. And then when you also look at art, are any of you artists that would recognize the type of art that I've been showing on many of these slides? It's a mosaic, yeah. Mosaic was developed in the Byzantine Empire. If you're not familiar with mosaic, it's a bunch of tiny little, well, it doesn't have to be squares, pieces that, when put together, make a larger picture of something. My favorite mosaic of all time is when I went to the Jelly Belly factory in Burlington, Wisconsin. There's a Jelly Belly factory there. If you're ever traveling through, it's right off the interstate. It does not cost anything to go through, and they give away free samples. Yes. So, yeah, there's a few of those, but they're not always free. They had a mosaic. Actually, they have a number of mosaics where people have taken individual Jelly Belly jelly beans, and they have done these massive pictures. One of my favorite ones is Ronald Reagan, and it is about the size of the ceiling and the width of one of those whiteboards. It is massive. And there's a couple other ones, a Statue of Liberty, there's Elvis Presley. So there's all kinds of mosaics that are there as you take the tour through the factory. It's pretty cool. So they were well known for their mosaics. And then the greatest, perhaps the greatest representation of Justinian's empire was the Hagia Sophia. This was the most prominent church. He had this built to display his power, his wealth, and just the restoration of the greatness of the new Roman Empire. Well, he was not without his problems. There were many problems and many disagreements within his church, or within his empire. One of those was the fact that he neglected some of his borders, especially on the northern and eastern side of the empire. So that meant it was vulnerable to attack from the north, which is going to happen, and vulnerable for attack from the east, which is also going to happen. He probably put a little more money into internal improvements and restoring the buildings and structure than he did on military. And of course, we can look back on this, we can criticize and judge and say, well, yeah, you should have done that. But at the time, he didn't see as much need for all of that. His other problem was the fact that all of his building projects were financially draining the budget, and there was not going to be money left long term. And one of you mentioned this, that he didn't think long term, he was thinking short term. And so because of all these building projects and money he was spending, eventually that money was going to run out. And that's part of what leads to the decline and the fall of this half of the empire as well.